Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
Hello, my name is Sarah Adams, a pseudonym. I'm a married woman in my late 30s. As a woman, I feel so embarrassed about what I'm going through that I haven't been able to talk about it with anyone, so I'm turning to the power of anonymity to share my story. It's been about 3 years since my husband and I have been intimate. It wasn't always like this. When we were dating, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. We'd be together every time we met, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. But after we got married, something changed. At some point, I stopped wanting to be intimate. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was busy raising our child, and frankly, I was so exhausted that I didn't have the energy or desire for it. But once our child started going to daycare, I had more time to myself. I could work out in the mornings and had a bit of breathing room in life. Naturally, I started wanting to be close to my husband again. Plus, I'd read that living in a sexless marriage isn't healthy, and I was determined to fix things between us. But my husband kept coming up with excuses. His reasons were always different. One day, he was too tired. Another day, he had an early meeting the next morning and needed to go to bed early. At first, I was angry. Then I started feeling sorry for myself. And then I resigned myself to it, thinking, well, we've gotten by without it so far. But eventually, I found myself wondering, why am I living like this? I'm not even 40 yet, and while the stereotype is that men are the ones always wanting it and women are the ones saying no, I started feeling like some desperate animal for wanting to be close to my husband. On my birthday, after putting our 4-year-old daughter to bed, I decided to let down my pride and, with the help of a little alcohol, I asked him, "Hey, it's my birthday. How about we do it?" "I'm tired," he replied. "It's my birthday," I pressed. "You're rejecting me on my birthday?" I felt myself getting irritated. He didn't even acknowledge the tension. "I'll clear the table, you relax," he said casually, avoiding the subject. This constant rejection is grounds for divorce, you know. Is that what you want? Do you want a divorce? It wasn't the first time I had brought up divorce. "It's not like we're never going to do it again," he said. "Let's just do it later." When? It's ridiculous to schedule it like an appointment. I fired back. Or, was it bad for you? Is that why you don't want to? It wasn't the first time I'd asked him that question either. "No, it's not that," he said. "If there's something wrong, I'll fix it. We're supposed to work on this together as a couple, right? Just tell me." Tears welled up in my eyes. I felt like I was begging. "It's my birthday. You could at least give me this as a birthday gift." My husband was quiet for a moment. Then he finally said, "I just don't have a sex drive anymore. It's like not having an appetite. Sometimes people just don't feel it, you know." He was saying that he didn't have a sex drive, one of the basic human needs, and I couldn't understand it. Without another word, he left the table, went to the bedroom, and closed the door behind him. I sat there, staring blankly at the seafood dishes I'd made especially for him: oysters, eel, and octopus, all considered aphrodisiacs. It was my birthday, and I was sitting alone, eating food I'd prepared for him to feel energized. Later, I noticed he wasn't sleeping in our bedroom, but in the small spare room. My anger boiled over. How could he be sleeping so peacefully while I was fuming? I stormed into the room, and to my shock, I caught him pleasuring himself. His lack of desire was suddenly very clear to me, and in that moment, I froze, horrified. "What the hell? You've been lying. You do have needs. So tell me the real reason you keep rejecting me." He looked at me and, with a mixture of shame and reluctance, finally said, "You've put on too much weight. I just don't find you attractive anymore." It felt like someone had slapped me across the face. I'd suspected it might be something about my appearance, But hearing him say it out loud was a different kind of pain. It's true I'd gained about 20 pounds since having our daughter. And yes, I hadn't been taking care of my appearance the way I used to. But my husband? He'd put on weight too, probably at least 20 pounds since his bachelor days. His belly stuck out, and honestly, he looked like any middle-aged dad. It's not like he was some model. I didn't exactly get turned on by looking at him either, but I still wanted to be with him because he was my husband, the father of my child. It was the love I had for him that made me want to be close, but to hear that my weight was the problem, it was infuriating. So, all this time, you've been rejecting me because I gained weight? I demanded. He hung his head and muttered, "I'm sorry." The next day, I dropped our daughter off at daycare and met up with my friend Amy, who'd been divorced for a while. I debated whether to tell her what was going on, but eventually, the frustration spilled out of me. "I think your husband's cheating on you," she said, as if it were obvious. "No way," I replied. "He doesn't even have the time. You know he comes straight home after work every day, and he's always home on weekends. He doesn't have any hobbies like soccer, golf, or fishing either." Amy shook her head at my naivety. "Girl, you're so clueless. There's a reason they call it an office wife. Guys like him can have affairs with women from work. They sneak around during lunch breaks or whenever they have a free moment, then act like nothing happened when they come home. That's office cheating for you." I felt a wave of dizziness. Could she be right? "Open Pandora's box," Amy continued. "Check his car's dash cam, go through his phone if you can. And while you're at it, lose the weight. Men are all the same, they'll use any excuse if you're not as hot as you were before." Her words stung. It was like she was saying that if my husband had cheated, it was all because of my appearance. When I got home, I did what Amy suggested. I checked his phone and the car's dash cam, but I didn't find any evidence of an affair. Still, the thought of living like this, sexless and unhappy for the next decade or two, filled me with dread. I thought about divorce, but I couldn't go through with it because of our daughter. My husband was a great dad, and she adored him. I couldn't take that away from her. So, using my daughter as an excuse, I decided to put off the divorce and threw myself into dieting. I watched my meals, worked out religiously, and started wearing more feminine clothes again. 6 months later, I'd lost the 20 pounds and was back to my pre-baby weight. I even started looking for a job. One evening, Amy called me up, saying we should grab a drink. I tried to decline, citing my diet, but she insisted. Reluctantly, I agreed, and we met at a barbecue place. When I arrived, I was startled to see my ex-boyfriend, Mark, sitting at the table with her. "I brought him because he wanted to see you," Amy said, smiling slyly. Before I could react, she stood up to leave. "I'll let you two catch up," she said, clearly planning this in advance. I quickly followed her outside. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. "Just giving you a little fun," she said with a wink. "Come on, you haven't slept with your husband in ages. Why not have a little fun with Mark? He's still single, you know, probably because he's still hung up on you." "I'm married," I protested. "Yeah, and? Your husband's probably getting it somewhere else, too. Why should you be the only one left out? Remember how hot things were with Mark? You deserve that again." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Amy, you got divorced because your husband cheated on you. How can you say that?" "Exactly. I'm just trying to make sure you don't get the short end of the stick. Mark's still into you, and it's obvious your husband isn't." I went back inside, furious and uncomfortable. Mark smiled warmly at me. "Hey, Sarah, you look great," he said. "I'm leaving," I responded defensively. "Whoa, hey, I'm not going to do anything. Sit down, let's just talk. It's been a while." He told me about his life since we'd broken up, and I half listened, still reeling from Amy's setup. As the conversation went on, Mark brought up the past. You know, I never really understood why you married him. I mean, he's not better looking than me. He doesn't make more money than I do, and from what Amy's told me, things aren't great between you two. Why didn't you marry me? I downed my beer, not knowing how to answer. He's a good man, I finally said. I married him because he's kind. Kind? Mark scoffed. If he's so kind, why are you so unhappy? I wanted to defend my husband, but I couldn't. I was miserable, and Mark's words cut deep. I felt pathetic. 6 months of dieting, of trying to reclaim my old self, and here I was, still feeling trapped. I tried to leave, but I was tipsy from the beer, and Mark reached out to steady me. Before I knew it, he was hugging me. Memories of our past together, our chemistry rushed back. For a moment, I felt that old desire rise in me. I pulled away quickly, but not before Mark leaned in and kissed me. It was just a peck, but I felt guilty immediately. My heart raced, and I pushed him away. What are you doing? I snapped. Sorry, he said, backing off. But you're still as beautiful as ever. I never stopped thinking about you, you know. I felt my heart flutter a little. When you're a mom, especially one who's been feeling ignored by her husband for years, it's hard not to get swept up when someone calls you beautiful. But I couldn't do this. I wouldn't. Mark, I'm married. I love my husband. I hailed a cab and left. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling. That brief kiss, that short hug, filled me with so much guilt I could hardly breathe. Yes, things with my husband were hard. Yes, I felt lonely and rejected, but I loved him. What would he feel if he found out about that kiss? What would it do to us? As I sat in the back of the cab, I realized I had a decision to make. Either I needed to find a way to fix things with my husband, or I needed to confront the truth about our marriage. Whatever that truth was, it terrified me. Of course, it's not like I wanted it to happen. Tears of guilt welled up in my eyes, but then, strangely enough, I found myself smiling. Mark had wanted me. Whether it was just for a night or something more, his desire, whatever it was, had revived my crushed self-esteem. That's right. I'm not dead yet. I'm still a woman. I can still make a man's heart race. Then my phone rang. It was a call from the company I used to work for before I got married. They were offering me a remote job, suggesting I start working from home again. I accepted the offer right away. That night, I was feeling a little buzzed from the drinks, still glowing from being called beautiful and excited about landing a job. Confidence was surging through me, and I wanted to seduce my husband. We had been sleeping in separate rooms since my birthday, but I went into his room without turning on the lights and lay down beside him. He didn't say a word. I slowly unbuttoned his pajama shirt. He didn't resist. I kissed him on the lips, and he kissed me back. Feeling emboldened, I slipped off my dress, then my bra and panties. I helped him out of his pajama pants and underwear. Before I knew it, he was on top of me. Just as we were about to fully connect, right at the crucial moment, he lost it. His body went limp. My body, which had been burning with anticipation, went cold. He tried to get it back, but it didn't happen. He lowered his head in defeat, and I left the room. It hit me then this had happened before, back when he first started avoiding intimacy. His body had failed him then, too. I lay in our bed alone, laughing bitterly. Maybe this wasn't all my fault after all. Maybe the real issue wasn't me, it was him. For the first time, I felt a sense of relief. I even thought to myself, if it had been another woman, would he have failed so easily? The next day, I made him eel soup. Sure, I'd won some small victory the night before, but what did it really mean? My victory was also my defeat. Honey, why don't we try seeing a therapist? I asked him over breakfast. I told you I'm not doing that. I was just tired last night, he said, staring into his bowl of soup. Isn't every man tired? but that's not an excuse. He still wouldn't look at me. Maybe you should get a prescription, I said. I said no, he replied flatly. I don't want that. What do you want then? I asked, frustrated. I just want to live like this, he said. As long as we raise Emma well, that's all that matters, right? We can live like this without sex. You can be a nun and I'll be a monk. I couldn't believe it. Most women are the ones who don't want it, and their husbands are the ones asking for it. Why are you the one avoiding it? I shot back. That's when I realized how cowardly my husband was. He was going to keep blaming me for everything. Fine, then. Let's live like this. Just like this. And so, that's how we live now. I can tell my husband is trying to be nicer to me than before. I guess he doesn't want to end up divorced. One day, Amy handed me a gift box. What's this? I asked. It's an electric husband. It's going to set you free, she said with a wink. With the electric husband, I take care of my own needs. Honestly, it knows me better than any real man I've ever been with. It hits just the right spots and gives me deep, overwhelming satisfaction. I've lost count of how many times it's brought me to mind-blowing orgasms. But even though I've had plenty of thrilling nights with it, I still feel lonely deep down. Sometimes, holding that toy in my hand, I feel utterly pathetic, especially knowing my husband is sleeping in the next room. Mark called me a few more times after that night, but I never answered. I want to keep my family together. I don't want a divorce, so here I am, living with both a real husband and an electric one. Is this the right choice? I don't know. Thank you for listening to my story.